Hello, everyone. We will get started in just a little bit. Welcome to the webinar. Glad some of you joined early. As you're coming in, let us know where you are in the world, and if you want to find the chat and put in your name and where you're calling in from, we'd love to see that. So find the chat, and if you can add that, that would be great. Welcome, everybody. For those of you who don't know about the Global Environmental Education Partnership, this is a global network, and it is all about how we can create a vibrant learning community to share effective practice, talk to each other, and strengthen environmental education. And this is absolutely a partnership program. It's all about partnerships. It's all about working together and collaborating. None of us can do this work on our own. And when we think about the GEEP, it's really all about strengthening environmental education around the world. And we have so many people who are working on so many different aspects of this because it's a big umbrella. And we're all trying to build a more just and sustainable future. And we have so many wonderful advisors from around the world and so many members of the GEEP who are doing so much to advance environmental education. And this program is all about partnerships, and I want to give a big thank you to Taiwan EPA, US EPA, the GEEP Asia Pacific Regional Center, and my own organization, NAAE, which is part of the GEEP, along with all of you. And NAAE is the secretariat of that GEEP, and that just means we run the day-to-day operations and try to keep everybody connected. And the GEEP is a network of networks. We do work with so many different organizations and people who are heading up other networks, because the whole point of the GEEP is to share information and knowledge like we're doing today. And the Asia Pacific Regional Center is the first GEEP hub, and we have one of the co-leads on tonight. Nikki is here, and you'll be meeting her in just a minute. And she is fantastic, and we're really excited to have her on board today. And I also want to thank Nina Hamilton, who is the Senior Manager of International Programs at NAAE. If you have any issues, you can just message her directly in the chat box if you need any help at all. Big thank you to the whole GEEP team who behind the scenes set up this webinar, Shin, Ann, Madeline, Andy, and Will, who is our WebEx guru. So thank you so much. Remember throughout the webinar to put your questions and resources and ideas into the chat box, and you'll get a copy of the recording and the PDF of the PowerPoint. So don't worry about taking notes, just listen and enjoy. So we are going to start with two questions for you. The first one is, what one or two words do you think of when you hear the phrase circular economy? Write your answers in the chat. Okay? What do you think of? When I say the word circular economy, what comes to mind for you? The only solution, reuse. I love that. Everybody wins. Commerce's future. Less waste. All these are great. Waste is food. Sustainable future. These are fantastic. Okay. Bill and Serena, I think we've got some experts in the group, which is really great. Okay, one more question for you. In the chat, on a scale of 1 to 5, rate your circular economy expertise. One is that you are a circular economy expert, and 5 is you don't know much about the circular economy. So we have a 4.5, we have a couple of 2s, we have a 3, we have a 5, we have a range here, and hopefully our speaker is a 1. That is great to see, Bill. Hooray, hooray. Okay, we've got a range of people. Wen Fang, great to see you. Hello, we've got a couple of 3s, so some people in the middle. Well, now I'm going to get the ball rolling here and introduce our moderator who is kicking off everything. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce our moderator tonight, Nikki. And for those of you who don't know Nikki, she is fantastic. I want to give you a little background. She's an associate professor in the master's program in environmental education and resources at the University of Taipei. And she's the chairperson of the Chinese Society for Environmental Education. She works with many government agencies and NGOs to promote environmental education. As I mentioned earlier, she is the co-host of the GEEP Asia Pacific Regional Center. Her research includes things like intergenerational programs, activity development and management in EE facilities, and the study of innovation diffusion in environmental policy. So thank you for being here and being our moderator, Nikki, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Judy. And hello, everyone. I'm very happy to see so many of you from many countries on the internet today. As our host, Judy, just said, I've been in the field of EE for more than 20 years. But to be honest with you, when it comes to circular economy, I'm still learning. So when I ask people about circular economies, people around me said, well, always says it's about 3R, reduce, reuse, recycle. But in fact, as far as I know, CE should be a more innovative way of thinking about business management and our living habits. So today's talk is like the medium that brings us into this future. It's my honor to introduce you. First is William Wescott. Bill, next page, please. Thank you. Yes. Bill has been a very specialized and a leader in many areas such as circular economy, climate change, and sustainable development. Next. Next, yes. He was the vice president of the company Veolia Environment, which is a French multinational company providing water management, waste management, transportation, and energy services. Bill currently serves as a senior fellow at the U.S. Council of Competitiveness. He's also a consultant to many universities and companies through his firm BrainOxygen LLC. And Bill has rich international business experiences. He's also the author of a series of children's picture book on climate change. So next. Judy, next. Yes. So you see the title, and I even showed my kids last night with my 2 kids the story The Kingdom of Tides last night, and they love this book. So okay. Then next, let me introduce Serena. Yes. Czarina Constantino-Panopio is the national lead for the No Plastics in Nature initiative. And she's also the project manager for the Plastic Smart Cities project with WWF Philippines. Next. The No Plastics in Nature initiative is aiming to stop plastic waste leakage in 2030. Serena is also an EE 30 under 30 awardee. She was previously an organization capacity development coordinator with Philippines S&T Development Foundation, FieldDev Foundation. FieldDev aims to empower social enterprises to grow and to become globally competitive and to contribute to the achievement of SDGs. Okay, next. Yes, so it's my pleasure to introduce you these two presenters, and let me welcome next Bill's speech with a quote from the end of his book, What Will We Create Tomorrow? Let's welcome Bill.
Thanks so much, Nikki. Real pleasure to be here. I'm so happy that we have a global audience. Again, I spent most of my career outside the US. And the big observation relative to tonight's talk is that the global South is the example for the global North and not the other way around. And things get a little off track when the global North, using its economic powers and cultural powers, tries to link prosperity to consumption. And the title of my little talk here to just kind of lay the foundation for circular economy concepts is how do we decouple prosperity, which everybody deserves, from consumption. So I want you to keep that in mind as we move forward, and hopefully my slides will also move forward. So circular economy basically is how the world should be working currently, in which we think about the big questions, including zooming really way out. What's the meaning of life? And I think if we reflect, we would find that the meaning of life is not about stuff, but about experience and relationships. And oftentimes stuff can enable those experiences and relationships, but we shouldn't get hung up on the stuff. So I think from an educational standpoint, there's a huge opportunity to ask the big whys, employ design thinking. You know, what are we really trying to achieve by creating a good or a service? And think about the systems in which these goods and services are provided. And then I want to talk about how do we end up in their current situation, which is a bit of a mess. And then how can you take circular economy from this conversation and into your classrooms? So a couple of quick stories. One cool thing is we are practicing the circular economy right now. We are having this meeting on WebEx, which runs on cloud services. So fortunately, Judy and her colleagues didn't have to buy a whole bunch of computer servers, buy a whole bunch of software and maintain them so we can have this meeting. This all happens through the magic of cloud computing. And that sounds really high tech, and it is. So they have basically separated the service and the value provided from the hardware. So in the past, you had to buy your hardware, you had to buy your software. It was very expensive. There was a big pain in the neck to maintain this. And they said, people don't want to own that stuff. They just want the services. And so that decoupling of the service provided from the goods was a huge aha moment for the whole world. So now we have much better computing abilities at a much lower cost. So we have an equality aspect, an equity aspect of that too. So if you're a startup in Manila or in New York City, you have access to the same amount of power from computing. So that's a huge win, and it happens to actually reduce the energy usage, material usage, and it's categorically superior. So we need to have everything along that same model. How do we get to circularity just as they have the IT sector? And an unlikely example is motor oil. That sounds like the opposite of high-tech cloud computing. In many ways, it is. The reality is, when I was working with a oil company many years ago, in fact, over 30 years ago, and to figure out a sustainability path, they said, oh, our big product where we make a lot of money is motor oil. And now people are complaining that used motor oil is being regulated. And that's a big hassle and an expense and a new thing they have to deal with. And so after a series of conversations, we came to an obvious realization that nobody really wants to own motor oil, and they certainly don't want to own used motor oil. So they just want to have their machinery run and not break down. So if you sold the service of the motor oil while retaining the ownership of it, not only do you solve a big client problem, you, in recycling that oil, have a much cheaper feedstock. So you're making more money by super pleasing your clients, and categorically it's superior, and there's much less impact on the environment. So this is how motor oil can be like high-tech cloud computing. And this is nothing new. This is how anybody in a resource-constrained environment has lived for millennia. So that includes all of humanity, prior to a couple hundred years ago. It includes people currently living in resource-constrained environments. It includes my grandmother who grew up in the Great Depression, and she would never throw anything out. She would always fix it or find a purpose for it. And even the food containers that she would buy at the grocery store with her Cool Whip or what have you, she would clean them out and recycle them, so she didn't have to buy Tupperware. It came free with the goods she bought at the grocery store, and enabled her to send people home with food after visiting. So this is the mentality I think everybody needs to have. How do we be as clever as possible while husbanding our resources? And so the question is, why, if this is such common sense, why are we not doing it? And how did we get off track? Well, we, in the last 150 to 200 years, have been living in what we call the linear economy, because it goes in a line from extracting resources. Think about in a mine, or chopping down trees to make wood or fiber for paper, and extracting some raw materials out of that, turning them into something like an automobile or paper to write on. And that requires all kinds of energy and inputs. It has to be transported to the consumer and then used. And then we throw it away. We put the car in a junkyard. We put the paper, hopefully in recycling, or perhaps in the trash. And that's the end of the story of that particular product. Unfortunately, that is hugely inefficient. But to make it more attractive economically, we've been really good at economies of scale. And these two graphs are my just hand-waving ways of explaining what we have been and what we should do. Don't take these to an economist. This is just my kind of conceptual explanation here, where what we've done in the past really, really well is that we have gotten economies of scale. So we have huge mines and huge refineries. So the unit price of the plastics and of the metal has gone down a lot. So the more we produce, the cheaper it gets. And over time, we get smarter and smarter, and it gets cheaper and cheaper. And for better or for ill, we send manufacturing to cheap labor, but cheap, only nominally cheap labor areas. Again, because we're all laser focused on getting the lowest cost of the good, because we want to sell the good. Whereas where I think we really need to be is thinking about the value that good provides. And if we were as obsessed with getting the cost of that value delivered down as low as possible as we have been about getting the cost of the goods as low as possible, then we're going to live in a much more sustainable world. And this is where the circular economy comes in, because it's really focused on the service goods provide, the value they provide. And as I said, this is really kind of what I would say life is about. It's about that value provided, not having an accumulation of stuff. And this decoupling of your quality of life, your prosperity from materials and from consumption really comes about when you think about things in a design way. And in many cases, you don't really need it. So in the case of computing, you don't need the hardware and software, you just need those computing services. So if you can virtualize it, like an ebook, so I have children's books in paper form, but it's even better by having an ebook. Then everybody wins because it's cheaper, it can be reach the world, and have fewer environmental impacts. And this book, by the way, does talk about the circular economy in a way that kids can engage. And then if you do need a physical good, like I need transportation that is safe, reliable, and affordable. It's like, but do I need to own a car? I don't actually. If I could have that as a service, then everybody's better off. And we've kind of started through the sharing economy, so where we have either an Uber or a Lyft type of service where a person can share their car and their driving skills to have transportation as a service, or toolkits. I don't need to have a fancy toolkit that I just use a couple times a year. I can actually share that with my neighbors, and everybody is better off. And there's even a cool thing, especially when you get to biological systems like food and agriculture, where those nutrients, if they're in the wrong place, they create pollution. If they're in the right place, they can actually regenerate the whole system. So if we can return those nutrients back to agriculture from food waste, everybody is better off. So this simple diagram is kind of shifting from where we are in the linear economy to being much more circular, keeping everything in play, keeping value in play. When we do have biological systems like food, trying to have circularity around the nutrients. And then what is oftentimes one of the first steps and kind of an entryway into circularity is at least designing waste and inefficiency out of the products and services. And this is a really complex diagram that I won't go into, but just I want to flag that the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has been a leading light around circular economy. It has all kinds of wonderful educational resources you can use. And this is called the butterfly diagram because it kind of looks like a butterfly, and talks about how we can close the loop on biological systems as well as on non-biological systems. And you'll notice that the best ways to be circular, which is on these outer loops, is to keep things basically in play. It's the last result basically is to do recycling. So Ellen MacArthur Foundation, I'd highly recommend looking them up and their resources. And one of their really great, very relatable resources that you can bring into your classrooms is around food waste. So how in your school cafeteria can you be, one, aware of food waste, that about 30% of all food ends up being wasted, and what can you do about that? So how can you right size your food system? How can you take the food waste that is being generated and capture those nutrients and put it back in an agricultural setting, and realize the climate benefits from doing so by not producing methane? And my last slide here is just a quick summary of the categorical benefits of the circular economy. Because we are being more efficient and less wasteful in materials and energy and transportation, and we're also shortening supply chains, making them more resilient, we're saving a whole bunch of money. Just in Western Europe, it's expected that the savings would be about almost $2 trillion per year. So absolutely huge. In the United States, we have an estimate of about $1 trillion. And that's actually with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, which tends to be on the conservative side. So we increase income for people. We create green jobs that are reasonably well paying and inherently local. So it's a boost to the GDP. And for the current wonderful focus on climate issues, my big selling point for the circular economy is I call it the free lunch for climate. We can reduce climate impacts by about 15 to maybe 20% while making money, like cloud computing, or at least cost neutral. Other aspects have costs associated with them, but also create great climate benefits. So the total reduction could be about 48%, so halfway to our net zero goals. So keep this in mind that circular economy has all of these benefits. It is really, I think, a great way to introduce your students into thinking about systems and design thinking. So it's a fun way to engage them too. Happy to answer any questions that you may have now, and otherwise pass it back to Nikkei and Czarina.
Well, I want to thank Bill for your wonderful presentation, because from your speech, I just found out that I'm already living in a circular economy society, because I see the movie from the Netflix yesterday, and my husband riding a scooter of Gogoro. It's like you can pick it up anywhere you find it and put it back. It's like you rent the scooter. So we have one question from Alex, and
Yes.
okay, do we want to answer the question now or maybe later together?
Well, since it's hot, and then Serena, why don't you just go ahead and load up your presentation as I address the question.
Yes, I think for your time, you still have like 2-3 minutes to answer the questions.
So Alex, that's a great idea in terms of is there evidence? And I would say I haven't seen any quantitative evidence. However, I would say that the rate limiting factor for circular economy is education. That one of the reasons why it hasn't been practiced is that we are so involved in our own worlds, and the linear model dominates our worlds currently. And by the world of advertising and selling goods rather than selling services, that we really thought about, hey, wait a second, what are we really doing here? So education is absolutely fundamental at all levels. So I'd say, K to 12, planting those seeds, but for policymakers, like right now, and showing them actual data, really boring stuff. Things like, PhDs like myself love to sink our teeth into, showing the economic data that there is, categorical superiority, showing the climate data. One of my key policy initiatives is to get marginal cost curves that show for different circular economy approaches, what is the cost benefit and what is the climate benefit to that. So that's again, I would put that in the of environmental education. So it's really critical. And then the last question here is like, what companies are leaning towards circular economy? So good news is there are a lot, and there's some famous poster children like here in the United States, a carpet company, Interface, and you think carpet circularity, that doesn't feel right. But it shows you that if you sell carpet as a service and say, hey, I own the carpet, I take it back, I take a headache off of your hands, similar to the motor oil story. But now I have a really cheap feedstock. I just chop that carpet up and recycle it, get resin out of it. But also I design it to be recycled and reused. Everybody's better off. You make a lot more money. And then there's so many companies like that, and we can go into that if we have time later on, from, again, transportation to materials packaging as a service, which kind of feeds into Czarina's comments. So if you think cleverly about almost any good and think about what the service the good is providing, and then say, how can we just deliver that service? Those are opportunities which oftentimes are commercially more attractive than selling goods.
Okay. If any one of you has any more questions, you are welcome to write down in the chat board. But next, let's welcome Serena's next presentation. From her sharing, I think we can know how Philippines turned the concept of circular economy into reality. Let's welcome Serena.
Yes, thanks Nikki and also Bill for that great introduction, also discussion about circular economy. So hello everyone, I'm Czarina. So I'll be sharing with you how we are implementing the No Plastics in Nature initiative in the Philippines. So what you see in your screen right now, it is actually an actual photo that we took when we visited a recycling facility in the country. And you see that there's a lot of high value plastics out there, but actually in the country we only have 9% recycling rate. So imagine the volume of the waste or the plastic waste that we are already generating. And not all of the high value plastics that we are generating in the Philippines are actually ending up in the recycling facility. So we really need to think about and redesign how we are consuming and how we are putting products into the market. And so I start with my presentation just to give you an idea of the situation in the Philippines. So in 2019, pre-pandemic, Filipinos are already generating about 15.43 kilograms of plastic waste every year. So you would say that, oh, it's not that a lot because it's for the entire year. But plastics is very lightweight. So you can just imagine the volume of plastics that we are already generating with that. And this is pre-pandemic. So we are still building on the data for the pandemic, but there are some estimates that's definitely it's saying that the plastic consumption is going up, given that we have already have like e-commerce, and also people don't want to go out, so they're buying or having goods delivered to them and all packaged in plastic. So I think this relates to what Bill was mentioning earlier. How do we want to like the value for things or the products that we want to like how do we see, or how do you want things delivered to us or the services that are available to us? And as I mentioned, only 9% is recycled in the country, and 35%, this is the estimate, leaks into the open environment. And in the Philippines, we are implementing the No Plastics in Nature initiative. So this is a network-wide initiative. And what we're implementing is we are implementing circular solutions at the local, national, and global level. We are also going to like eliminate unnecessary plastics. So what you say when we mean like unnecessary plastics, we acknowledge that WWF acknowledges that plastics is something that is beneficial at some point. And when we say that it is necessary is when it protects the product integrity. So say for example, if you put like a food inside the plastic, as long as the food, it will help lengthen the food's life, then we can kind of think that it is a necessary plastic, because we don't want to remove the plastic altogether in that packaging and then kind of increase of because we weren't able to like lengthen that the life expectancy of that food. So there's a need for us to evaluate what are the unnecessary and necessary plastics in our life. So and of course, for those that we see that are necessary, we want to stop it from leaking into the open environment. And you see that in the Philippines, in our context, there's already an estimated of 35% leaking into the open environment. And of course, we want to close the loop. So we're pushing for innovation, redesigning, reuse, and recycle. So I'll be sharing with you some of the things that we are learning and we have learned as we are implementing this No Plastics in Nature initiative. So first off, circular economy is nothing new. So we are already practicing it as mentioned by Bill. And in the country, when we try to explain circular economy, they would say that, oh, it's a Western concept. It's not something that I can relate to. We always share with them like this context. So we have these rice cakes in the country. So I don't know if it's also present in other countries, but we love rice cakes, and we usually wrap it in this banana leaves. So when we eat the rice cake, then we just throw the banana leaves in the compost or in something that would bring it back to the environment. And since it is biodegradable, then it is something that we kind of how we explain circularity. We are already practicing circularity. Wherein when we eat it, when we provide our products, when we provide the food that we are putting into the market, there's a way for us to like also recover or do something with the packaging that is it that it has. So similar with this rice cake. So for the way we explain circular economy to them is this. So when we eat rice cake, we just throw it into the compost, and then it goes back to the environment, provides nutrients, and help the plants grow in the country. And when we implement solutions, one of the things that we implemented in the community is this wala usik tindahan. So it literally translate wala usik is a local language in the Visayas area, in Visayas Island in the country, and it translates to no waste. And tindahan is actually community stores. So right now, what we're doing is we actually piloted like a plastic-free sari-sari store or plastic-free community store. And this is one of the stores that we piloted. You'll see that, so we have the guard of the store, you'll see there. So all of the packaging in the community store is plastic-free. So so the dog is guarding all the way, all the products we're in. You see that there are rice at the top part wherein it's already packaged in a reusable packaging, wherein the community can just bring back the packaging so that they can refill it with rice again. And each packaging is already equivalent to 1 kilo of rice. We're also piloting we also piloted the refilling part, wherein people can just go back there and refill like any commercial products. And you'll see that most of the candies right now are and are packaged in single use plastics. So what we do is we actually piloted like we only cater or share candies that are already not packaged in individual not packaged individually. So when children are buying, they just get from the container, and then that's it. There's no waste from buying these candies. So this is one of the things that we are piloting in the area. Definitely there is a struggle, given that in the country it's a sachet, we have the sachet culture, wherein we want to have things packaged individually, but we try at some point to pilot this and change the paradigm, or change the thinking of the people that we have been doing this before, why can't we bring it or practice it now? So another thing that we encountered in our work is and we want to share is that circularity can be practiced by everyone, because a lot of people are saying circularity is something for the middle class up. So I'm in say for example, I'm part of the marginalized I'm in a marginalized community. I won't be able to practice circularity. So what we do is we also partner with communities to show them that this is something that can also be practiced in all of the communities regardless of social class. So this is actually an example of what we piloted in one of our areas. So Women's Bright is a local women's organization in a marginalized community in the southern part of the Philippines, Davao City. So this is actually our champion. So she's Inday Abe. So she really wants to educate people that refilling is a thing. So you can buy in small packages, but you can actually bring that package again to her, and she will refill it with the commercial products or with the products that she is selling. So this is one of the things that we piloted in the area, and she has this women association helping her educate people, and also of course selling to them, showing them that it is really possible to practice circularity in their community. So until now they are selling, or they have this refilling station in their community. They actually have this wherein they also go to other communities. So the is a balance between upstream and downstream solutions. So we understand that it's not about the it's not just the businesses alone, but it's actually all of the solutions that should be both upstream and downstream. It's not just about a waste management issue, but for us, how our products is. And one of the things that we are pushing in the country, and it's actually now a law in the Philippines, the Extended Producer Responsibility Law, wherein we have been, WWF has been advocating for this scheme in the country, because we believe that it's a way for us to really push for circularity. And why we're seeing that is because with EPR, something that we're seeing is it should be a balance, that the businesses or the obliged companies take into account like two things, not just waste management, but also waste reduction. So in the country right now, there are obliged enterprises. It's already a law, and we will be starting hopefully in 2023 the implementation of the EPR law. And with this, we businesses right now in the country will have recovery targets by 2023 of about 20%. But we see that it's not just the recovery part, but there's a need for them to also redesign how they are putting their products into the market. So like designing with recovery and reduction in mind. We are also saying that it's a system. So pushing for circularity, it's, as I mentioned, it's not just about the consumers. It's not just about like the local government units or the cities and or municipalities that should be doing something, but everyone should be doing something. Um, it's always a thing wherein people would say that, oh, it's consumers are consuming a lot of the stakeholders, wherein there is a role for cities given in the Philippine context. They are the ones implementing the solid waste management system. For the businesses, they should all think about how do they design with a reduction in mind when they put out something in the market. Because right now in the Philippines, we have about 60% of low value plastics, meaning it is not recyclable. So what we want is to kind of design it in a way that we will be removing the unnecessary plastics, and then also hopefully they get to put out, they would say, the necessary plastics, but it's something that is of high value so we can recycle it. And of course, we are also advocating for global policy. So right now, there's a global treaty already on plastic pollution. So what we're doing is we want to increase the commitment of the country in pushing for it. And just for my last slide, so it is a system. So there's a need for us to engage all the stakeholders from the youth sector, from the local government unit, social enterprises, government, and women. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Serena. I want to thank you for your lovely talks and lovely pictures. And again, everybody who has questions for Serena or for Bill, you are welcome to write on the chat board. And while you are writing the questions, I just want to share that hearing Serena's talk, I'm particularly touched because the plastic industry is one of the main industries in Taiwan. So plastic is very cheap and we often eat out. So in our daily life, we produce a lot of plastic bags, plastic tableware, and plastic bottles. So I'm very happy to see this kind of source, in Philippines. So let me see. Okay. Oh, we have questions from Bill and Judy. So Zarina, you want to answer both of their questions first?
Yes, I think it's really more on extended producer responsibility really helps to, as I mentioned, like redesign how we are putting our products into the market. I think that's the first up for circularity. It's not really ensuring that things are recycled as presented by Judy earlier in the first slides as we started this webinar, but it's really thinking about how do we put something into the market, or are we putting only the necessary plastics into the market? And that's already putting thinking about circularity. And say, for example, if we put a product out into the market and in packaging, how do we ensure that the packaging will not end up in nature and will still be within the system and within the loop, so to close that loop so that um, it won't get wasted, or having that linear thinking of when we consume and then we lengthen the products that we put
There's
into the
a
market.
few more questions. One from Matt, which is pretty similar to my wondering how you teach the younger students, to reduce plastic usage.
Yes, it's always important for us to see what they value at the moment, and trying to relate that circularity on that value. So, say for example, we and also thinking about how do we maximize the channels that they are in. So, in the Philippines, social media is a big thing for youth. So for us to try to reach to them, it's important for us to take into account the social media factor. And of course, for like the value right now, honestly, when we talk about circularity, sometimes we would relate it to how they are dealing with life at this point, and what are their values. And you see that for younger generation, it's sometimes related to like like the social factors. So the way we educate people, or the way we educate the youth, is how do we try to make it relevant in their lives at this point, at that point in time.
Thank you, Zarina. And I think Judy raised a big questions. What are the biggest challenges we face in changing mindsets, policymakers, educators, etc.?
Yes, I think Bill can also help me on this one. But yeah, one of the challenges that we see in changing mindset is one for us in the Philippines. They always see circular economy as a Western concept, and so we always try to change their mindset that this is actually nothing new and we're already practicing it. That's actually one of the challenges, because I only heard of circular economy now. So what are you trying to introduce? So we're trying to translate the circular economy concept into something that is understandable, or that is already common to all of the stakeholders that we engage with.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I
Zarina.
think that's absolutely key, and that I love Serena, that you had one of your slides titled, circular economy is nothing new, because again, even at the policy level, if people feel like, oh my gosh, this is again some Western European thing, and it's a new thing, and I have to think differently. You're going to make me think. I don't like thinking. You say, no. I look at all the ways that you're already, circular, and how, especially your ancestors were 100% circular, and how most of the world actually is in a resource-constrained environment and is circular. You goes away because there's a stain or there's a tear, you fix it, you clean it, you find a use for it. Your pot has a hole in it. Well, only 1% of the pot has a problem. So just fix that little 1%. And that's why you have a tinker, particularly in the old days, even in Western cultures, and they fix the pot and you're back in business. So again, I used to live in India, and it's like almost nothing went to waste. And the challenge has been, again, with the best of intentions, people, including myself, were trying to help with economic development issues. And so like C.K. Prahalad, who wrote the book, The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid, with the best of intention of saying, hey, all you big brands worldwide, you can serve people with very low levels in terms of hard currency, at least, of economic resources by having a sachet approach. And that was like, oh, great. Now we can have affordable products that can increase quality of life for lots of people. Hooray. And actually make a product at it. And it's in line with capitalism. And then we weren't thinking at the time about, oh no, what about all that packaging? And this is where we get back into the refill environments of like, yeah, everybody, the country store in the United States, and until probably the early 1900s, there's no packaging. We didn't have plastics. You served the candy, you had the tongs, and you gave the kids the candy and a piece of paper, and then that's how things worked. And you refilled containers. And the cool thing about plastic, I'm a chemical engineer, is like, wow, these are great materials. They're strong. They're flexible. They're lightweight. So many good things. They do so many good things. As Serena pointed out, they extend the shelf life of food. Hooray, that's great. But now we have to apply that same kind of design thinking of saying, okay, as Serena said, how do we take unnecessary plastics out? How do we close the loop at a high level of value as possible with these wonderful materials? So we show these materials to our ancestors. They'd be like, wow, I'd pay a lot of money for this amazing material, and you're so lucky to live in this future where you don't have to pay much money for it, which is why you do need things like extended producer responsibility to say this is something that has value on it. Let's put a price on that value so it's easier economically to close that loop. And my quip about extended producer responsibility is, if you're proud of your products, they are your children. And just like your children, you should be willing to take them back. So that's how I think everybody should think about when you have a business that produces goods, that you should always be willing to take them back. And then that kind of changes your mentalities in two ways. One, you can say, oh my gosh, that will be expensive and logistically complicated, and I'm not set up for that. And so you can think about, let me rethink my whole business. And maybe I should be selling the services of my goods instead of the goods themselves. And then I kind of avoid a lot of the challenges with extended producer responsibility, or at least I'm on an equal playing field. So EPR is not just a solution in itself. I think it creates a helpful pressure for companies to rethink their business models. And as they rethink their business models, rethink the design of their products, so that for your cell phone, you may end up making it more modular, more upgradable. Invest in the dumb parts of the cell phone, like the frame, so it's more rugged, going to last a long time, and make sure that the components that are going to be upgraded, like the CPU or the memory or the cameras, those are modular, easy to upgrade. And then we keep the same, basically, most of the materials in commerce, and we just upgrade the parts that need to be upgraded. And so every 6 months, every year, I can get the latest technology, which happens to be just the upgraded, same platform as somebody else used. And I'm happy about it. I don't have an accumulation of old cell phones now. And my price should also go down. So everybody can have better access to a higher quality of service.
Yeah, I agree. We really need to redesign the system at this point. So, and there's a need for, I actually agree with you, Bill, when you mentioned earlier that a lot of companies are already seeing the importance of circularity. So, we're also seeing that in the Philippines.
Right. And I would say the one kind of caution is that the easy thing to go to is recycling. And certainly that can be a very positive, first step, but it should not be the last step. It really should be the last resort. And this is where behavioral inertia, including on the company side, it's like, hey, I already make the products, I already have the plastic packaging or the product itself made out of plastic. Let's just try to do the best we can with the end of life of the packaging and or the product, versus just kind of rethink from the very beginning, what am I really doing as a company, and what is the value I am providing. And so that kind of competency trap that recycling can represent, that as we get better and better at recycling, it takes pressure off of people to rethink the nature of their business. I think it can everybody disfavor. I think back into the question about how to circularity forward. It's like, if we create little people who are just naturally thinking about design, who are naturally thinking about systems, as they go into the world, they're going to bring that kind of thinking into their work life and create new businesses, reform existing businesses, and that's where we really need to be. So I think having a little bit of discomfort through things like extended producer responsibility actually does everybody a favor by incentivizing them to rethink their businesses.
Since we only have 2 minutes left, I don't know if we have time to open for one last questions, but I'm also want to ask, maybe Serena and Bill want to share maybe one short final conclusion with us. And also, Bill, you can put the link of your ebook.
Yes. So for me, I think something in pushing for in advancing for circular economy, I see it in the chat as a question. It is important that educators communicate circular economy as something that is we are already practicing. We don't have to communicate it in a way that is a new concept or a very distant concept, and we just need to like facilitate because that would facilitate like action from people saying that it is important for it is already we are already practicing it, and we can continue practicing it, and like request or demand the practice of this from a system-wide approach. So yeah.
And yeah,
I just posted the link. Thank you, Nikki. To this book, which is I call it Marie Kondo discovers Hindu and Buddhist philosophy of non-attachment, and it's really about kind of the meaning of life and about experiences and the process of creativity versus being obsessed with the products of creativity. So I think it's a really great way, especially for younger children, to open their minds and open up the conversation to circularity.
Okay, thank you, Bill and Serena. I hope that our audiences today can start thinking about whether various products or behaviors in life can be converted into the design of circular economy. And so I'll turn the camera, the microphone to Judy. Judy, you want to say something in the end?
I will just say, Nikki, great moderation, and Serena and Bill, thank you for sharing. And thanks to everybody on, great conversation. And we could talk for another 3 hours, but we won't right now. But thank you all so much. Great job. Really great job, and a really important topic. Thanks, everybody. Take care.